I've got to tell you about the day I saw my first shark. Now, my best diving buddy was Ed DeBee. He was my best friend. And we usually went to Gandy Bridge, but that day we decided to go to Howard Franklin Bridge. Now, Howard Franklin Bridge was further north, and it also connected St. Petersburg with Tampa, and it was a lot newer than Gandy Bridge. And we didn't go there very often because it was a little inconvenient to get there. And this was our first trip to Howard Franklin Bridge. And we got out there, and to dive at Howard Franklin Bridge, you've got to go through this little break in the safety fence where someone took wire cutters and cut a hole. And then you've got to ride right along the edge of the water. It's kind of beach-like, kind of a two-rut little trail, and you've got to ride for maybe a mile along that edge of that until finally you get to where the bridge and the water meet. There's a long causeway, and the bridge is part of the causeway. And you get there, and we parked our motorcycles and hit the water. Now, the water there is, of course, murky, but it's not very deep, maybe 15 feet deep, 20 feet deep. And we went out to the first piling. Now, when I say piling, bridges are held up by these big pilings. And I don't know exactly how big they are, but it seems like they're about that big, maybe 20 inches by 20 inches. And because it's salt water, the pilings get covered, and after a few years, they get covered in barnacles, and usually just barnacles, sometimes oyster shells. And we had a technique that we developed. We could dive. We only had one spear gun, so we would share spear guns. And we would hang on to the pilings and ride up and down with the waves, holding very carefully because barnacles can cut you. You'd put our feet on the edge of the pilings, one on each side, and put our hands up above, and you could kind of go up and down with the waves like this, and you could rest, and you could breathe and get ready for your next dive. And when your buddy came up, he'd hand you the spear gun, and you'd dive down and have your turn searching back and forth. Now, a piling system, they come in rows, and each row is maybe 6 pilings wide. I don't remember exactly, 5 or 6, and so you dive the entire row, and then you come up for air, swap guns, and then you take your turn resting on the pilings. And the barnacles go from the water level down, and because the water level rises and falls with the tide, depending on what tide it is, there's always a bunch of barnacles above the water line. And so no matter where you grip, it's sharp and, risky. You have to be careful. So we would go from piling to piling, getting further and further away from the shore as we went, looking for fish. And after a while, it got to bothering you because it's murky water diving, and there's no logic to this. A shark can be anywhere, but you would have these little fears in the back of your head, and so you'd reach a certain distance from shore, and you go, oh, I'm not going to go any further. I'm just reached my fear level. Well, that day we were 5 or 6 pilings out. When I say pilings, rows of pilings. So that put us maybe a quarter mile offshore. And we were diving in water maybe 15, 20 feet deep, murky water, of course. And it was my turn to dive. And so, we've read all these shark books and heard about sharks, but never saw one. You don't see a shark in Florida unless it's just right in your face because you can only see 6 feet. And there could be hundreds of them out there smelling you and wondering if you're a good meal, but you never see them. Well, we were diving. It was my turn to dive, so I took the spear gun, and at the time we had this stubby little arbalete. It was maybe 3 feet long, very powerful. And I dove down in the water. I started investigating the pilings, and I was just about out of air. I could stay underwater about 2 minutes, and I was just about to run out, reach my limit, and all of a sudden this little shark comes swimming by. Now, when I say a shark, I'm not sure what kind it was. It might have been a sand shark of some kind, but it was at the very most 3 feet long, maybe 2 feet long, and probably only this big around, a harmless little thing. I mean, if it bit you, it would be just a little, painful little nip. But it was the first shark I ever saw, so I was excited, and I wanted Ed to see it really bad. And so I come charging up to the surface, and I burst out of the water right next to Ed. And I said, Ed, take the gun, quick, go down there, there's a shark. And I wanted him to see it, and he heard me really excited saying, shark, shark. And in his mind, he pictured this 15-foot long jaws, bum, 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 bum. That's what he pictured. And so he saw me all excited, and I'll tell you, in a split second, I've never seen anybody move so fast in my life. Ed just climbed right up that piling. It was... Normally you can't climb one, but when you're full of adrenaline and you're really excited, it's amazing what you can do. And he just shimmied like a tree right up that piling. He cut his legs, he cut his arms, he cut his stomach. Everything got cut with barnacles. Not big cuts, just little scratches, just enough to make you bleed, just enough to be painful. And so here's Ed climbing. He got almost clean out of the water. And I started laughing. I said, Ed, it's only that long. It's only that long. What are you doing? And he got really mad. He says, why didn't you tell me? I got so scared. And so we got down, and he's bleeding everywhere. It's not too smart to be a murky water diver bleeding while you're bleeding. And so we just swam right on back to shore, and it took him over an hour to get over it. All the time I'm just laughing and teasing about it because we saw our first shark, or at least I saw my first shark. Ed saw him in his head, and the one Ed saw in his head, I wish I could have seen it because it sure put the fear in him. He climbed right up that piling just like a cat climbing a tree. It was funny.